Hello, friends. Once again, back to talk about Bigfoot. I want to let everybody out there know we're doing Tape Eaters not tonight, not tomorrow night, but Sunday night, which I believe is Easter, by the way. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm never sure on these things. Happy Easter, regardless. The Skinwalker gang meetup at the Gathering of the Juggalos number 2 is being planned. There's another Bigfoot hunt. I don't want to go on that. I already went on one. It was fun. We saw him. We saw Bigfoot. But, whoop whoop. To all out there who care. Doing it right this time. Not making any promises, but doing it right this time. If your idea of fun is like eating a 10 strip of acid and like blowing up fireworks in the middle of a mosh pit, I would recommend the Gathering of the Juggalos. If you're more faint of heart, maybe not. The porta potties are leveled off, baby. The showers are communal. If these things scare you, then yeah, you don't want to go to the Gathering. But if you want to suffer as you have more fun than you've ever had in your life, maybe it's for you. And you can hear Bigfoot out in the forest. His call of whoop whoop echoing through the trees. So with that, I am here to read The Hoopa Project by David Paulides. Flame Upon Herb in the chat says smoke weed every day. Midwest Vikinger says zombie Skyman daddy. Look, I love Jesus. Whoop whoop. Last time I left off at best Bigfoot evidence, past and present. There are many stories related to Bigfoot that go back 200 years. There are documented newspaper articles in the 1800s talking about hairy wild men that ran wild in Central California, Washington, and British Columbia. There are no verified documented cases of a Bigfoot purposely injuring anyone, anywhere, at any time. An unusual aspect considering it is an immense wild animal. No verified documented cases, so that's kind of shady wording. Like, of course there's no verified cases of Bigfoot anything. That's the point. So what is a verified documented case? Like the specific cases he's going through in this book? I'm not sure, because, I don't know, like, Theodore Roosevelt had like a secondhand account of Bigfoot killing a man. I'm not sure what makes that less believable than a lot of these stories. I guess, like, these are mostly firsthand, but it's like, I'm pretty sure there are stories. There's always stories, you know? You don't verify a goddamn thing. If it was verified, this would be zoology and not cryptozoology, right? Newspaper articles do not constitute evidence, but they do document sightings prior to telephones, mass media, jet travel, and the internet. People were reporting on Bigfoot encounters before there was mass reporting of the phenomena and before Bigfoot was an accepted name for the creature. Hair samples from Bigfoot have been recovered and many have been DNA classified. Many of these hairs have come back not on file, with primate being the closest known animal. DNA is the best classification tool known to science, but there is not one centralized database that keeps all Bigfoot DNA. This entire section of Bigfoot investigations is very fragmented, with organizations reluctant to share with others. Anyone collecting hair samples should understand that DNA is only recoverable in the follicle of the hair and it deteriorates rapidly after being released from the animal. The best method to collect and retain hair samples is to put them immediately in medical-grade alcohol and get them to a lab as soon as possible, which usually isn't accomplished. Bigfoot scat, Bigfoot scat, Bigfoot scat has also been recovered and DNA classified. The same results have happened with scat as with hair. The one very interesting aspect is that parasites not known in North America have been found in the scat. Bigfoot scat has been reported to look like a giant human scat. Very large. I like the way all of that is worded. So, I wish he was more specific about these parasites. Parasites not known in North America. So where are they known? I'm assuming Asia, which is like taking us down a Gigantopithecus route. What kind of scat parasites, you know? Like, are they a new scat parasite that has never been pooped out before? I don't know. Very large. Footprints from Bigfoot have been reported for decades. Many people who have not read recent articles about footprints immediately will call all of them a hoax and unreliable. Far from the truth. There have been several university professors and police technicians who have recently gone public, stating that many of the footprint casts are authentic. They can see dermal ridges in the print, essentially the fingerprint of the foot, which would be next to impossible on a hoax. Impossible to hoax. Several of the prints have been examined by anatomy experts who state that the contour, bend, and structure of the print could only be made by a primate, and could not be hoaxed without advanced knowledge, which isn't readily available to non-experts. Handprints fall into the same category as footprints, and they have had the same level of success and authentication. In the last several years, a team of Bigfoot researchers used to bait to bring Bigfoot into an area. They deliberately picked an area that was conducive to making prints, and then left food for the creature to eat. When they came back into the area, they found that the creature had been there, ate the food, and actually sat down and possibly leaned on an elbow while eating its meal. The area where the creature sat was made into a large cast, the Skookum cast, and has been examined by some of the most advanced scientists interested in Bigfoot in North America. This cast has validated much of the information about the physical aspects, size, weight, body structure, etc. of Bigfoot. It is a very interesting cast. So they set some apples down with a bunch of mud in front of it, and there were all sorts of impressions in the mud. No footprints. And it's hard to say what any of it is. Like, people will be like, there's a heel in there, there's its elbow, there's where its ass was. And the skeptics will be like, no, that's just an elk. But like I said, there's no footprints in this cast, and by that I mean there are no hoof prints either. I am purposely avoiding an extensive description of the Bigfoot evidence because that is not what this book is about. There are many outstanding books in print that offer exhaustive insights into evidence that will satisfy anyone's craving in that area. The First Contacts. Officer Greg O'Rourke, Officer Chance Carpenter, Hoopa Tribal Police Officers. Midwest Vikinger says, who would smash a female Bigfoot? I don't know, how big are its tits? Litva Sila in the chat, whoop whoop. Just like Bigfoot says. You got Skinwalker Outdoors, Southern Pollock. Big turd. He's just constipated from Kratom. Big turd. It was very large. I bet he was proud of himself. You just gotta, marvel at it. On my first night in Hoopa, I found two tribal police officers parked next to the only gas station in Hoopa. They were talking to each other in separate police vehicles. I drove up in my vehicle, parked, and walked up to an officer later identified as O'Rourke. I explained why I was in town, looking for people who have witnessed Bigfoot, and asked if he could shed any light on the issue. O'Rourke was raised in the Hoopa area and is a native Indian. He's Native Indian. That's a weird term. I was going to say Native American. I'd rather just call them, Indians or whatever. That's easy. But Native Indian. It's not from India. He stated that the Hoopa people believe in Bigfoot, and that it lives in the trees, similar to what we saw in the movie Predator. That raises all new questions, like cloaking Bigfoot type ideas. The Glimmer Man, if you will, which we might be talking about on Sunday. He said that they believe that it lives in the middle zone between both dimensions and can travel between them. He stated that they believe that Bigfoot should be left alone. Don't bother it, and it won't bother you. O'Rourke stated that 30 years ago, there was a story that a woman who lived in the mountains between Hoopa and Willow Creek had found and kept a Bigfoot male child. The story goes that she raised it into its teens. It never went to school and just stayed at the house. It's a Bigfoot. You sent that thing to school, dude? Are you serious? He stated that it had hair over its entire body and never spoke to anyone. He said that when the woman died, the male creature escaped into the hills and was never seen again. Seems almost like cruel. You get it used to eating like people food, like Cheetos or whatever you're feeding it, like Cheetos and red wine and like Xanax to make it chill out. And then it just goes back into the hills and like I guess it'll survive, no doubt. But did it really learn how to survive from its Bigfoot family? No. Gotta find that boy. Bring him to school. O'Rourke's only incident involving Bigfoot was when he was 12 years old. He said he was hunting in the area with other family members when they were setting up camp. They forgot some items in their car, and he volunteered to go back alone and retrieve them, carrying his rifle with him. He said that as he reached the car, he heard something strange and he froze. He notes that Indians are always taught that when you hear anything strange or see anything strange, you should immediately freeze. He heard a loud and solid thump-thump, approximately 30 feet from where he was standing. He maintains it was so solid that the earth almost shook. The footsteps stopped, and he felt as though something or someone was watching him. He grabbed what he needed and made a dash back to camp, thinking that maybe one of his family members was playing a trick on him. He stated when he finally got back to his group, he found them all there and there was no prank. Thump thump. So I guess that was something running beside him. At first I thought it was a tree knocks or something. But it's like that scene in Jurassic Park when like the water's rippling. And standing still when there's something strange, like that's an obvious one. Like, I don't know, we could try to make that spooky and metaphysical if we wanted to, but really it's like what you do for any animal. Just chill out for a second, assess the situation, no sudden movements. Chance Carpenter was the other officer I met on my first day in town. He also grew up in Hoopa and has stories about Bigfoot. He said that he has talked to many people over the years who have seen Bigfoot on the roads leaving Hoopa, usually in the late afternoon and evening. He related how a friend had told him that he was driving up a local road, went around a turn, and saw Bigfoot kneeling in the middle of the road. Chance told me that I should meet Inker McCovey at the recreation department, as he had a few great stories about Bigfoot. D2017 says, "Ayo, fart noise." Litvasila says, "Internal parasites are usually exclusive to species, unless they got different hosts during different growth stages. Discovering a Bigfoot exclusive parasite in Bigfoot poop means Bigfoot eats poop." You've broken my mind with this one. Oh, let me think about that one for a second. Okay. Bigfoot scat, Bigfoot parasites. This is the only way we'll verify Bigfoot. You have to find the scat and eat the scat? Alright. A story closer to home for Chance is one that involves his friend's girlfriend, who lives on the fringe of town. He said that she heard a noise at the side of her house, near her garbage cans, and went to investigate. Never a good idea. Leave the fucking junk alone. It's just trash. She saw Bigfoot reaching over her shed with two huge arms, pulling the bags of garbage over the fence. When she yelled, Bigfoot turned and fled. He said that there were dirt handprints on the bags that were shown to neighbors. Chance told me that he would contact this individual and see if she would talk to me. I was later put in contact with witness Raven Ulibari. See her sighting report for details. Who was the woman officer? Was the woman Officer Carpenter identified as seeing the Bigfoot at her shed? Cool. Klamath River Monster. Kamos. We go with Kamos. Klamath River Monster / Kamos. D2017 says the kneeling Bigfoot then did the spin-a-rooney. If you like what I'm reading, folks, please hit that Stream Elements link and fucking donate literally anything to hear Chris Chan yell at me. Just do it. It's easy. Sub me. If you're not subbed, sub. You hear Bob Chandler. Need more noises to spook me while I'm trying to focus. That's what we need. Klamath River Monster, Kamos. On a side note, both officers asked if I was interested in hearing a story about a monster that lives in the Klamath River. They state that it looks like an extremely large snake and has the ability to go into the ocean in low water flow. They claim it also has the ability to live in sewage systems near cities that border the ocean. They state that this is a very old Indian story that has been validated by many who live in the area, and that many people in the community have seen and experienced the monster, which they call Kamos. Ah, it's the name of the monster. Nobody knows how to pronounce this thing, I can guarantee you. You go out, you try to Google this shit, probably won't even come up, so. They said that all tribal members tell their children not to enter the Trinity River unless you can see the bottom. If you can't, then Kamos may be looming in the river. If the river is clear, then it is most likely a low and lazy flow and safe for swimming. That's cool. So a large snake, so it's reptilian, it's got this, sea serpent basically, in the river. In the river, man. I would never let my children in this thing. One thing that's interesting is you have these freshwater monsters that are able to travel back and forth from their freshwater source into oceans. That comes up fairly often. And one thing that I'm thinking of right now is blue holes. You have stories of people disappearing in blue holes, which are just these deep holes of fresh water that are feeding in underground. And seemingly infinitely deep. Not actually infinitely, I'm sure, but practically speaking. You don't want to fucking get lost in this thing. You don't want to go under that water. If you're under there too long, then a monster got you. And one thing they say is that they're fed from somewhere, likely leading back to the ocean. And one theory I heard is that squids or giant squid or octopus or some shit like that could somehow get into these holes that lead back and forth, and they could be grabbing people and pulling them into crevices to be eaten, consumed. Tony Hacking, staff biologist, United States Forest Service, Orleans. On my second day, in the Hoopa area, I decided to meet with the staff biologist for the Bluff Creek region surrounding Hoopa and Six Rivers National Forest region, Tony Hacking. I met with Tony at his business office in Orleans, California. Tony told me that he has been assigned as the go-to person on all issues regarding Bigfoot. He stated that his supervisor is the district ranger, and he believes that as long as it brings recreation and interest to the district, he is, for him, spending time on the subject. I should state here that this is an unusual position for a United States Forest Service ranger to take. Most USFS supervisors refuse to talk about Bigfoot and won't allow their subordinates to talk about anything related to Bigfoot while on government time. Tony stated he was recently highlighted on a Travel Channel special about Bigfoot and was asked to give his expert opinion and enlighten America on the topic. He took the TV crew to the original site for the famous Patterson-Gimlin Bigfoot video that was filmed in the Bluff Creek Basin. He said that it was quite a challenge first to find the site, and then to positively identify it was even more of a challenge. He said that they confirmed the sighting by finding a pyramid-shaped rock that was in the original clip, but that the entire basin has changed dramatically. Tony explained that since 1967, there has been significant erosion and damage to the creek bed in this area, and it looked quite different than it did in the film. Oh, let's just take a moment to vape. Listen to this Red Dead Redemption music. Quite calming. I need more, I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, music that sounds like Bigfoot, man. This one did it for me. The Far Cry 5 menu theme. Not bad. Not bad. I need something more tribal for the next book. I mentioned this from time to time. I use video game music because it doesn't get hit by copyright. Makes life easy. Tony explains that he wants to be a Bigfoot believer and that his position is enthusiastically optimistic. He stated he knows about the dermal ridges in the foot castings, the unknown determination of DNA analysis, and the enormous number of stories that proliferate throughout the region. He said that he is the only government biologist anywhere in the basin, and he is covering 2 different offices. He said that there is supposed to be a position in Happy Camp. But the Forest Service has not filled it. Is that our boy? Tony hacking. There he is. He looks like, who's that guy? Oh, man. Ron Howard's brother? Something Howard? Something Howard. Hacking said that many people who see Bigfoot are reluctant to talk about the experience for fear of ridicule. Local residents usually direct witnesses to his location for documentation and wildlife identification. He does state that he tries to find a rational explanation for a sighting that is reported, but sometimes it cannot be explained. He said that administrators inside the United States Forest Service have refused to expend research dollars on the Bigfoot issue. He explains that his position doesn't do research, it's more about wildlife management. The researchers are in Eureka, and they don't or won't work Bigfoot-related issues. Tony's job requires that he be in the field a majority of his time doing studies on a variety of wildlife management problems. He said that whenever he is out in the field, he is always looking for evidence of Bigfoot. One piece of evidence that people usually don't search for is wildlife paths that have a height clearing of over 7 feet. Wildlife paths that have a height clearing of over 7 feet. He points out that most animals that walk trails need a maximum height of 5 feet to cleanly walk day in and day out. He was recently working in the Blue Creek Trail / drainage area and walking a wildlife path when he realized he was walking in heavy foliage that had over a 7-foot height clearance. He found that highly unusual for a very desolate area of his region. Tony claimed that this is the one time in his career that he felt he might be walking on a Bigfoot path. So yeah, the idea is like on a game trail, like to make it a trail, it needs to be trodden. Something needs to be like moving shit out of the way at least a little bit to make it, walkable. So for something to have that much clearance, something must be moving shit out of the way like 7 feet high regularly. That's a good thought. Never heard about the Bigfoot game path idea. We got D2017 saying the Morrowind soundtrack. Maybe. I'll give that one a shot. Sounds like it might be a little too whimsical for me. Silent Hill 5? You might be going for the wrong vibe here, brother. People started donating, we get some fucking jump scares. Maybe that would work a little better. In the same general area of the main section of Blue Creek, a USFS employee working on a special project for the Yorick fisheries came into his office claiming he found a Bigfoot bed. He told them that they were in the region doing some special environmental studies when he was following the main segment of Blue Creek. Just up one small hill from the creek, he found bedding material, straw, dried grass, leaves, etc., that had been piled together in a deliberate attempt to make a bed. He also stated that there were bones lying on the ground immediately adjacent to the bed. He took a photo of the accumulation. He took a photo of the accumulation and showed it to Tony. Tony told me that the photo was a little too grainy for positive identification, but that it was always a possibility Bigfoot was involved. There's always a possibility. Anything weird is going on. There's like a slight possibility that Bigfoot is involved. You got to grant that at least. You don't have to grant its, definitive existence, but you got some weird shit happening. Bigfoot. Got Southern Pollock, Skinwalker Outdoors. Interesting. I'll look for that where I encountered it. Talking about, I guess, the clearance. Yeah, go sub Skinwalker Outdoors. Go sub that. It'll have good content soon. That channel. Our boy, Southern Pollock. Skinwalker Outdoors. You saw a Bigfoot? D2017 asks. The statement regarding the bedding does fall into a category of sightings made by other individuals about possible Bigfoot sleeping areas. Many times these beds are directly over/above a creek or river, and are often associated with dry foliage, and bones are sometimes found in the area. Tony did point out that some cougars have similar bedding to raise and harbor their young. The site that the USFS employee found was much larger than a normal cougar/mountain lion bed. I asked Tony to give a best guess of where he would set up a study for the environmental and physical study of Bigfoot. He said that he would drive to the end of the Go Road, Icy Road, noting that it takes approximately 1 hour to drive all the way to the end. He said that if you go to the northeast, it drops into the Dillon Creek Basin, and the other direction goes into Fish Lake and Bluff Creek area. Both areas are extremely desolate, with few people traveling into the region. He said that Upper Blue Creek, near the Bluff Creek region, would be an excellent choice. Near the end of our meeting, Tony told me of a phone call. Near the end of our meeting, Tony told me of a phone call he received after the airing of the Bigfoot special on the Travel Channel. It was from a female archaeologist from the USFS Plumas Division. She had discovered a petroglyph painted by Indians, which appeared to be several hundred years old. She had come out and publicly stated that one of the drawings was of a Bigfoot. She was ridiculed and restricted by her supervisors from ever saying anything publicly about what she had found. She was surprised that Tony's supervisors had allowed him to be shown publicly on television in his uniform speaking about the Bigfoot phenomena. Tony said that he felt fortunate to have the subtle support from his supervisors on the Bigfoot issue. I invited Tony to join me at a local restaurant for lunch, and he obliged. We spent approximately 4 hours talking about Bigfoot. He invited me back for a second meeting the following morning at 10 o'clock at his office. He stated that he would go over maps of the surrounding area and further explain sighting locations. The next day, Tony supplied me with the needed information to physically inspect several areas of interest. Sadly, Tony passed away from cancer in early 2007, leaving behind a wife and children. Big F in chat. Skinwalker Outdoors says, I don't know. I don't know if it was a Bigfoot, is what he means. I don't know if it was a Bigfoot. It smelled and mechanically roared at me, but never came out. Also overwhelmed me with fear. We do have that story on a Tape Eaters episode. I don't know which one. Who can say? Go listen to Tape Eaters episodes. D2017 says, mechanically roared? Okay, I remember you talking about that on the show. What's your best guess? So, yeah, the mechanically roared thing is what throws everything off. And that's a recurring element of a lot of these sightings. I think a lot of people would tend to go like, who do you do? Skinwalker? Oh, sure. They got mechanics. They're robots or some shit. I don't know. Yeah, there's no good answer for that. But the best connecting piece of, I don't know, information is like that story of the kid who went missing and he was like in a cave with like mechanical grandma. Yeah, you know. You know the one. We love it. Karuk tribal offices. I drove to the tribal offices of the Karuk tribe. Karuk? I'm going with Karuk, which was located in Orleans. I went to their Department of Natural Resources, where I met with 2 tribal members working in the office. I explained why I was in his area, and asked if he would talk to me about their tribal and local Bigfoot issues. They stated that they have lived in the area their entire lives, and that they had no first-hand accounts of Bigfoot. They did, however, say that they would talk, if they could, about their tribal customs. They invited me to ask questions. I asked them both to explain who the little people were. They looked at each other with stern expressions, and said that they were told by tribal elders that they were not to talk about this. Come on, guy, dude. Come on, guy, dude, man. You're gonna be like, ask me questions about my tribal customs. And the first thing, like, I'm gonna ask the coolest thing I can think of. And as soon as I do, like, well, I don't know. Slow down, white man. They were not to talk about this. I explained that I did not want them to betray their tribal beliefs or customs or to comprise their personal religious beliefs, but that I knew many people were interested. They thanked me and said they could talk minimally about it. I expressed my gratitude and said that if I asked an inappropriate question, I apologized in advance and asked for their forgiveness. I did ask them why there was a veil of secrecy about the little people. Both stated all of their people came from the little people. That is where their religious beliefs come from and where their genetic start was located. They both stated that theirs was the first tribe in the region. That's weird. That is where their religious beliefs come from. Like, that's not so weird. Even in Europe, when you look at ideas like Fae, which I think are very similar to little people, I think the whole fairy thing is like right on the money. Like these at one time were gods, they were nature spirits, they were ancestor spirits. However you want to look at it, probably different things throughout time. But yeah, as things changed, as like Christianity took hold, for example, they became something else. The genetic thing is very weird, because like if they were giants, instead of little people, say they were giants, and they started talking about genetics, well, that's a whole different implication. But having that connection to the little people, I would like to see some other parallels in other cultures. I can't think of any. As far as both saying that they were the first tribe in the region, like, I'm pretty sure every culture says that, basically. Both confirmed that medicine people inside the tribe still have contact with the little people. There are nearby mystical mountains and caves that are sacred, and these are the locations where the little people live and where they come from. These locations are hidden and secret. Both agreed that they could not state where these mountains are located. I asked them if there is a written doctrine/Bible for their tribe, and they said that there was not. They state that their tribe controls 1.4 million acres, and that they believe that their God gave them hands to help nature. They believe they were the first people in the United States. They stated that the main source of income for the tribe was grants from the US government. Dude. Imagine having, like, that much pride, and then being like, oh yeah, and all of our money comes from the government. Brutal. Talk about these hidden locations, these mountains. Like, it seems like obviously you could connect like Mount Shasta, where you've had all of these sightings of all of these weird things. Like, that's probably one of these locations where little people would dwell. After approximately 30 minutes of discussion, I thanked both men for their time and told them that I truly appreciated their outlook and explanation of their tribal beliefs. After many months of conducting research and interviewing tribal members, it appeared that the sacred area that the Karuk members discussed is the region at the end of the Go Road, the sacred high country. Deputy Greg Berry, Resident Deputy, Orleans, Humboldt County Sheriff's Department. As I was driving back through Orleans, I saw a Humboldt County Sheriff's vehicle stopped by the side of the road. I pulled over and engaged the deputy in a conversation. I explained why I was in his region and asked if I could ask him a few questions. He cheerfully said, "Sure." It was an extreme pleasure to meet Deputy Berry. He had been the resident deputy for Orleans for the past 8 years. He knew everyone in the community and had a wealth of knowledge about Bigfoot. He told me that he was married to a tribal woman. Her mother claimed to have spoken to Bigfoot in her backyard at the base of a mountain on several occasions. Everyone in the family believed her, he said, but unfortunately, she had passed on. I told him about the people I had met with earlier in the day, and Greg assured me that these were great contacts with credible people. I asked the deputy how isolated the Go Road and the region of Blue Creek and Dillon Creek really were. He asked if I had some time to take a ride with him in his sheriff's vehicle. I said absolutely. And Greg took me to the top of Go Road. During the entire journey, we talked about his agency, Bigfoot contacts, tribal issues, and the challenges of being a deputy in a small rural community. It was an absolutely fascinating insight into a job that few people truly understand, and I came to appreciate the role of law enforcement in that very rural environment. We reached the end of Go Road, and the view was unbelievable. You could see the entire Bigfoot range, Blue Creek Basin, Dillon Creek drainage, and the outwards towards Happy Camp. It was a clear day in late June, and you could still see how the snowy caps of the marble. What the hell am I doing? It was a clear day in late June, and you could still see the snowy caps of the Marble Mountains. A couple of interesting events occurred on the ride down the mountain. Immediately after making the turn at the end of the road, we saw a very large pile of scat, probably 1 to 2 days old, in the middle of the road. The scat was almost 2 inches in diameter, round, and full of stringy foliage in the scat, you know. Greg stated he thought it might be a large elk's, but wasn't positive. It was large, it says. It was large. 2 inches in diameter. Gah! Approximately halfway down the road, we turned a curve and saw a huge black bear meandering down the side of the shoulder of our road. We guessed the bear was between 400 and 500 pounds, with a beautiful black coat. Outside of a grizzly bear in the Yukon, this was the largest bear I had ever seen. Greg recommended that I contact Phil Smith, the owner of the Bluff Creek Resort at the base of Fish Lake Road. He stated that Phil has some interesting Bigfoot stories that I would appreciate. He also promised to keep his ears open and relay any other information to me when he heard it. Greg took me back to my vehicle. I sincerely thanked him for the trip and his hospitality. I really appreciated my 2.5 hours with Deputy Greg Berry, a true professional. After making my initial contacts with government employees and then introducing myself to a few of the locals, I started to develop some relationships that led me to understanding the habitat of the Bigfoot. It was with the eventual help of locals like Inker McCovey and Ed Maston that I was able to get out into the forests, see the food sources, and understand what made Bigfoot keep coming back. Skinwalker Outdoors says Bigfoot loose asshole, Bigfoot anal seepage. K98, Bigfoot pumping out logs. Make sure you go sub K98 too. D2017 says, at K98. Thanks for the vital lessons in regarding to dick washing, by the way. You've changed my life. Food sources. Berries. Berries. Now, that's another common thing in disappearances. People going missing while they're picking berries. It is common to both like these Bigfoot ideas and also to European fae stories. If there is one natural food crop that flourishes in the Hoopa Reservation, and at the base of the Go Road, it is berries. The bushes can be seen from almost any point in the valley while looking at the valley floor. Many of the bushes easily reach 8 to 9 feet high and 10 to 15 feet wide. They line some roads and creeks and act as property lines to some residences. Berry time. Look at them all. This is a view across Highway 96, just south of Hoopa, looking onto one of the main dirt roads that are lined by huge berry bushes. Berries. Some of the local residents do pick the berries, but many stay on the vine until a bear or Bigfoot gets a grip on them. I have never been in any region of the country that has such a proliferation of wild berry bushes. One summer, while I was working in Hoopa, I was walking along a dirt road adjacent to the Trinity River. I was noticing a large amount of fresh bear scat among the berry bushes I was standing adjacent to. As I walked around a corner, I came within 25 feet of a 300-pound black bear that was calmly eating berries. He paid very little attention to me, and I quickly took some back steps and left the area. The berries are an obvious source of nutrition for the bears. Once you complete reading the sightings section of the book, you will understand that the berries are also a large part of the Bigfoot diet. Matsutake mushrooms. During the time period from late November until as late as January 31st, Matsutake mushrooms grow throughout the lower elevations of Hoopa. Matsutake are a delicacy in Japan, and their buyers will travel to Hoopa during harvest time and pay as much as $50 per pound for fully developed mushrooms. Many of the locals make several $1,000s every year picking the mushrooms and selling to buyers. During my time in Hoopa, I had heard many stories about how to find, pick, and harvest wild mushrooms. Many of the stories sounded a bit far-fetched, and it sometimes sounded a little too easy. On a clear and cold day in early winter, I convinced Inker McCovey and Ed Maston to take me to the upper reaches of Mill Creek, outside the reservation, and explain how they find their mushrooms, and take me through the steps in harvesting. Since there are several occasions noted in the sighting section where witnesses have seen Bigfoot while hunting for mushrooms, information on how it is done may be helpful in understanding the sighting. Inker and Ed first explained that it takes moisture, lots of leaves, and filtered sunlight to get quality mushrooms. They told me that after the first heavy rains of the season, the mushroom will start to form. There needs to be a period of sunlight after the rains to allow the mushrooms to fully develop. During this sunlight period, the mushrooms will grow rapidly. Matsutake tend to grow in bunches. If you find one, be slow and methodic in your search, because there are probably others in the immediate area. You need lots of leaves to protect the mushroom in its infancy, and also to protect it from snow that will hit the area during these months. While we were on our mushroom hunt, there was snow in some of the areas we searched, and the leaves did act as a buffer between the mushroom and the elements. Searching for Matsutake is definitely a skill that takes some time to develop. After following Anchor and Ed for 30 minutes, I started to get a feeling for the type of filtered sunlight the mushroom needed. It was also easier to understand the elevation requirement and the type of trees in the immediate area that the mushroom needs. Lots of oak trees, and this is why the natives call the mushrooms tan oaks. The process of finding the mushroom can take a long time, moving a lot of dirt very carefully. If you move the dirt too fast, you break the mushroom and decrease its value. A matsutake that is protruding from the ground that is partially covered by snow and dirt can be seen in the middle of the photo. I don't really see it. It's probably there. There's some dark patches. I did not expect a mycology lesson, which I always appreciate. I do want to know about, the holy mushroom. K98 making a checklist over here. Mushrooms, berries, mountains, stones. The things you need for a Bigfoot. Or something else, maybe. Once an area of matsutake mushrooms is found, the snow is very slowly moved aside, and it usually has leaves frozen to it. As you are moving these aside, small tan spots anywhere from 1 to 3 inches in diameter appear, and you will notice the mushroom shape. Most people use a small fork-shaped hoe, and then wedge the mushroom out of the ground. In an area that is 15 feet in diameter, you may be able to find as many as 10 mushrooms. Inker explained that the mushrooms sometimes run in veins across the hillside. Once you find one patch and collect everything around the original area, don't give up. You want to keep collecting in angles out of that area until you lose any sign of matsutake. Ed explained that his tribe loves to eat the mushrooms. He broke off a small piece and told me to smell it. The mushroom has a distinct smell of oak, and it's one you will not forget. He said that the most common method for cooking the mushroom is to slice it thinly and fry it in a pan with butter. It's not healthy, but it's tasty. Finding areas to collect the mushroom is not easy. It takes a special permit from the United States Forest Service if you want to collect mushrooms in their forest. I don't like the way he sometimes uses the acronym USFS and then other times just fucking spells out United States Forest Service. Makes it confusing. Makes it sound like they're two different things. Sometimes he'll do the whole thing and then in parentheses it says USFS. And there's like a reason for it. Like, you're supposed to read both, and you're like, okay, that's what that is. And then later on, when he says USFS, you're like, all right, I already know what that is. But once you've done that, like, stop making me say the whole thing. It's annoying. Where the fuck was I? You need a permit. Government. You need the government to tell you can collect mushrooms. Whatever, dude. Been collecting mushrooms the government said I shouldn't collect for a long time. Only tribal members are allowed to collect mushrooms on Hoopa reservation property, and if a non-tribal member is found collecting on tribal property, they will be arrested and prosecuted. That makes sense. It's their property. Ed, Inker, and I were approximately 2,000 feet in elevation when we found our matsutakes. While they were patiently and quietly working the soil for the mushrooms, I stood back and watched for much of the time. I wanted to understand the circumstances of how Bigfoot would be seen while others were collecting mushrooms. I should remind you that there are several historical stories indicating that Bigfoot in the Hoopa area regularly eat matsutake mushrooms. Bears and deer also regularly eat the delicacy, and both are also found in abundance in the area. While we were hunting the mushrooms, Inker showed me where a deer had scratched the soil, found a mushroom, and took one bite out of it. This was one way that Inker found the area where the mushrooms were growing. While hunting the mushrooms, you are almost always looking down, and you are usually alone and not talking. If you are in an area where there should be a matsutake mushroom, you are being quiet, staying low to the ground, and engaged in your work. There's a very decent chance that something could walk up on you without you noticing, or you noticing them. There are many instances where Bigfoot has walked up to people while they were engaging in collecting mushrooms. A pile of mushrooms would definitely emit a significant odor, and that might possibly lure the Bigfoot into the area. In Inker's statement about his sightings, he explained that he had collected 2 large buckets of matsutake mushrooms, saw a Bigfoot and its baby, and emptied the matsutakes on the ground as a goodwill gesture, and left the area. Charles Maston was on a walk 2 weeks earlier in the same climate and altitude range we were when he saw Bigfoot. If Bigfoot was looking for a food source in the snow, he would be in the area where we found the mushrooms. It should be noted that the leaves in this area were 4 to 6 inches thick. When I wiped all of the leaves away, I found rock-hard dirt and gravel. It would not have mattered if it was leaves or dirt. Bigfoot tracks in this area would be nearly impossible to find because the ground and its cover are like cement. 14 matsutake mushrooms collected in one 10-foot diameter location. Here we have some shroomies, boys. So if you had a bunch of mushrooms and a Bigfoot and its baby walked up on you, what do? You dump out the mushrooms, or do you just like eat them as fast as you can and then wrestle them? Wrestle the Bigfoot while you're all high on mushrooms. It's the only time you can beat it. Acorns. Bill Whitaker says, many Bigfoot witnesses love to shoehorn Native Americans they usually claim ancestry. Oh, yeah. Like 1/16th Cherokee. Or in their Bigfoot stories, they... So apparently they're telling Bigfoot stories, and like, this is true, because my great aunt is 1/16th Cherokee. It's not a very good selling point. Acorns. A product of the oak trees is the acorn. It seems that almost anything living in and on the ground and flying through the air likes acorns. Squirrels, bears, Bigfoot, and birds are all in competition for the native nut. In the 1800s and early 1900s, Native Americans accumulated the acorns, ground them into a fine powder, and made them into an eatable part of their diet. If you pick up and eat an acorn, it will taste bitter. It takes some preparation and lifestyle acclimation to appreciate the nutritional attributes of the acorn. The Hoopa Reservation has thousands of oak trees, and a small search for the acorns reveals many of them can be found on the ground. I once had a dog who loved to fucking chew on acorns. It was weird, because the dog didn't like the taste of the acorns. It broke them open and then spit them the fuck out with like a nasty like grimace on its face. But it would always break them open in its mouth. I don't know what that was about. I had a friend once who we were smoking weed and he just picked up an acorn and like bit it like an idiot. He didn't have a good time either. I wouldn't eat an acorn. Fish. At the center of the Hoopa Reservation is the Trinity River. The river delivers one of the main food sources for the tribe, and also one of the primary tourist attractions to the area. Salmon and steelhead fishing. What does that word say? Coho? The coho and Chinook salmon, and the steelhead, are not the only fish in the Trinity River, but they are considered at the top of the food chain for sport fishermen. The river also contains lamprey eels, sturgeon, trout, and suckers. I will concentrate on the most important fish in the river for the tribe members. The Chinook salmon run the Trinity from April to September and are the biggest salmon on the Pacific coast. The coho run the river from September to December and are much smaller than the Chinook. The Pacific lamprey is also a staple to the tribal members. They live 4 to 5 years in fresh water and then migrate to the ocean, where they stay 6 to 18 months before returning to the river to spawn. The green sturgeon is the largest fish in the river. They migrate up the Trinity from February to July to spawn. They get as far upstream as grays fall before their trip ends and they spawn out. In later years, the sturgeon moved to the lower Klamath River estuary before they go out to the ocean. The biggest obstacle in recent times to the successful spawning and breeding of salmon and steelhead has been low river flows on the Klamath. The salmon and steelhead need cold, fresh water to get their eggs hatched, and a low river flow means warmer water with less area to lay their eggs. The main reason for low flows on the Klamath has been farmers upstream demanding more water for their crops. The U.S. Department of Reclamation has been in many lawsuits in recent years between the various tribes and the farmers, as each group has been demanding more water. Relationship of bears and deer to Sasquatch. Hoopa Valley Tribal Council, Natural Resources Department. J. Mark Higley, wildlife biologist. During my months in Hoopa, I had many employees from the Natural Resources Group come to me and explain that they wanted to work cooperatively on my project. And others even told me their Bigfoot stories. A few of the employees said that the management of the department had told them to steer clear of me and not dispense any information or photographs. The more time I spent in Hoopa, the more my name became circulated, and fortunately for me, I started to garner more credibility and friendships. To understand Bigfoot, it is important to understand its food source, deer, and competitors for its food, bears. If you have an understanding of how these animals migrate, find their food, where their food is located, and the amount of food available, then you will have a better understanding of the creature itself. I was extremely fortunate to study an area such as Hoopa. Considering the Hoopa tribe owns 144 square miles, it has a relatively large staff that manages their wildlife and forests. In contrast, the local United States Forest Service USFS office in Orleans has a smaller staff that is responsible for an area 20 times the size of Hoopa. And the USFS staff doesn't have the same vested interest in preservation, dollars into their bank account, that the Hoopa staff possesses. The Hoopa tribe directly profits from the sale of their forest products. The better they manage, the more they make as a tribe. During one of my visits to Hoopa Natural Resources, I walked into the office of the group manager, Mark Higley. I explained to Mark that I'd like to talk to him about bears and deer, and asked if he could offer me some time. Mark pulled up another chair and said he had 15 minutes. I had heard from locals that there was a specific deer migration that started from the southern part of the reservation, went north, and then crossed the Trinity near Mill Creek and onward toward the coast. I asked Mark if there was a migration that followed the path described. Mark replied that there was a migration, but not as specific as I explained. He stated that in the middle of winter, the bucks, male deer, stayed just below the snow line at approximately 4,500 feet. The deer on Mill Creek Ridge, Tish Tang Ridge, and Big Hill Ridge all move from the high country in the summer to the lower elevations in the winter. He stated that the move is subtle, and they usually do not cross rivers going from the eastern ridges to the coast. On the western hills of the reservation, the migration of deer is almost non-existent. I asked Mark to give me his opinion about the numbers of deer on the reservation. He explained that there are a few deer on the reservation compared to the property adjacent to it. Mark attributes the low number to year-round hunting, few regulations for tribal members on hunting, and high hunting pressure. Tribal members can hunt from their vehicles 24 hours per day, 365 days per year, and can shoot male or female deer, all contrary to California state law outside the reservation. Mark explained how the wildlife group attempts to monitor deer numbers by utilizing game cameras mounted on trees. The Natural Resources Group learned years ago that they would not get many photos if the cameras were within 200 yards of dirt roads, because that was the target range for tribal members who were hunting. They had to mount the cameras far inland from the roads to catch any deer on the film, which they did. Some huge doe and bucks were caught on film. The Natural Resources Group learned years ago that they would not get many photos if the cameras were within 200 yards of the dirt roads because that was the target range for tribal members who were hunting. That's like, it sounds sick to just be driving around dirt roads like blasting and then have like the animals get acclimated to that. It's weird stuff. Love it. It's almost like Bigfoot is acclimated to humans, huh? One of the most controversial subjects in Bigfoot research is the alleged correlation between bears and Bigfoot. There have been many Bigfoot researchers who have stated that Bigfoot is located where bears are located. The more bears, the more Bigfoot. There may be some rationale to the theory in that the more bears, the more food source, then more Bigfoot. It does appear that Bigfoot and bears share the same dietary practices in Northern California. According to the United States Forest Service, there are approximately 600,000 black bears in the United States. These bears range from 100 to 200 pounds for females and 350 to 700 pounds for males, with the average male in the 400-pound range. The black bear can live to 300 years old. That's how long black bears can live. Let's try again. The black bear can live to 30 years old if not under heavy hunting pressure. The Forest Service states that under their best estimates, there are 20,000 to 24,000 black bears in California. The bears have a history of eating grasses and berries and feed off the kills of other animals. Black bears have also been known to take down small deer, although this is rare. Mark and I now started to discuss the bear population in Hoopa. Mark immediately stated that after he and I were done talking, that I should also speak to one of his assistants and project manager on bears and deer, Elaine Creel. I told him that I appreciated the recommendation, and we continued with the conversation. Mark told me that he had been a biologist for Hoopa since May of 1991, and he had seen populations of bears increase while the population of deer decreased. Mark said that the best bear consensus estimates that they possessed stated that there were 400 to 600 black bears on the reservation for 144 square miles. He explained that some areas of the reservation had triple the population of other areas, with the east side having the fewest number of bears. He said that 80% of the bears were black bears, 15% brown or cinnamon, and 5% blonde, a genetic anomaly. I asked Mark about the rumors that I had heard that the bears in the valley do not hibernate, and if that was true. Mark stated that the healthiest bears do not hibernate, and that females that are pregnant must hibernate. He stated that the biggest bear they had ever captured was 400 pounds, but they do get larger than that. The bears in the valley may den only a few months, and if the food source is available year-round, they may not den at all. He also stated that most bears take short naps. I now asked Mark to explain the food sources for the bears in Hoopa. Here's what he told me. April. Acorns left over from earlier seasons. Some may be rotten. July. Berries, cherries, plums, apples, anything from fruit trees. Anything from fruit trees. Year-round. Fish from tribal members' fishing nets. Learned behavior from watching the fishermen clean out their nets. Bears are learning how to empty the fishing nets. And if a bear can do it, you know who else can do it? Bigfoot. This is a behavior that has been learned over the years. Members have joked that the bears have become so good at this that they steal fish and even reset the nets for them. I also asked Mark if they get many calls from the tribal members about issues with bears and how to control problem bears. Mark said that this is a constant headache and they are always answering questions about how to manage bears. He stated that there was one example where a tribe member called and said that they had a goat tied to a fruit tree. A bear kept harassing the goat in its attempt to get the fruit that was falling on the ground. The wildlife group explained to the member that they had to move the goat or risk losing it to an attack. The tribe member didn't take the recommendation and the bear killed and ate the goat. Mark also noted that the tribe members do not generally kill bears. Certain tribal members feel they have evolved from the bears and are tied to them in some evolutionary way. Thus, there is a huge population of bears and few deer. I don't really get that. Why would he call these wildlife people? About the... Okay, so the bear wants to get to the fruit, and he's got his goat tied to the thing. Why would he call somebody else to deal with it? Like, if you want to... And, okay, so they do not kill bears. Like, what did you want done with the bear? To, like, have them put the bear in a box and, like, drive it somewhere else? Like... We're at an hour and 6 minutes. Take a little breather, see where I'm at. Data. Motherfucking data. Alright, looks like I'm finishing this. Whether I like it or not. Here I am. Elaine Creel, Project Manager, Hoopa Wildlife. The day after meeting with Mark, I met with Elaine. She is a 29-year-old graduate student at Humboldt State University and a project manager on a federal grant to study bears, deer, and woodpeckers. I stayed clear of the woodpecker question. Elaine started the conversation by saying that she spent her earlier years studying on the Channel Islands in Southern California, and it was nice to be on land and studying wildlife. The first question I asked Elaine is why Hoopa has such a large population of bears. She explained that the tribe had specific timber practices that aided the bears in their growing population. The tribe steered clear of harvesting hardwoods, as the hardwoods produced the acorns that bears ate. Elaine also stated that the tan oak acorns were one of the bears' main food sources, and there is a significant number of these on the reservation. I asked Elaine to tell me about the tribe's bear management program and how they kept track of bear migration and problem bears. She stated that they had 10 bears wired with GPS collars. They can download bear You wouldn't download a bear. They can download bear locations at any time and are always watching and trying to understand their movements. At this point, one of Elaine's co-workers had heard our conversation and brought in a GPS printout of the bears monitored and their associated movements. It was immediately obvious from this printout that many of the bears lived adjacent to the Trinity River, and none had crossed the river during the year. I now asked about the bears and the river and their association. She said that they just finished doing genetic testing on the bears and found that the animals do not appear to cross the river. This surprised the group, as it was not obvious that the Trinity River is a natural divider in bear populations. I was further told that they find more cinnamon and blonde bears in the eastern hills. She added that while the population of these colored bears is relatively low, they could be easily located. In all my time in Hoopa, I had only heard one story where a bear was moderately aggressive, and it wasn't towards a human. It was the killing of the goat Mark had described. I asked if there had been any reports about a black bear being aggressive towards a human. She said no. The conversation with Miss Creel centered mostly on bears, but I ended with a few questions about deer. I asked her how she felt the deer population in Hoopa had changed in the last 20 years. She stated that the population of deer had definitely gone down, explaining that she had talked to elders about deer, and they had told her that 20 years ago you could find deer on the valley floor, but now you never see them. She did specifically state that the lack of deer is not due to a lack of food source. Correlating the data. After looking at the Hoopa tribal website, researching United States Forest Service documents, and reading academic articles on bears, there are some very interesting correlations that can be made about bear populations in California compared to bear populations on the Hoopa reservation. Here we have more spreadsheet bullshit. Fucking roll it up and smoke it. You know how we do. So in Hoopa... What is this? 600 is the maximum amount of black bears, 400 being the minimum. And that's in 144 square miles. So we have one bear per fucking... What does this mean? I don't know what this means. I can't even tell you. Is it one bear per 4.1 square miles? What is this 149? David Paulides, please help me out here. The point is, The point is that there's a lot of bears in Hoopa, and there's not as many in other places in California. Number of black bears. Hoopa Tribal Wildlife estimates that they have 400 to 600 black bears on 89,572 acres in their reservation. The United States Forest Service estimates that there are 20,000 to 24,000 black bears on available land that could be forested, which is 18.5 million acres. The data indicates that Hoopa has over 4 times the number of bears as the rest of California using the minimum correlating data numbers and 5 times the bears using the maximum numbers. The California Department of Fish and Game has been compiling bear kill statistics by county for the last 10 years, 1996 through 2006. The graph on page 70 indicates the 8 counties in the state with the highest numbers of bears killed in the last 10 years. I have also searched the 3 most popular sources for Bigfoot sightings reports and listed the total number of sightings reported to them for the same time period. It's interesting to note that the United States Forest Service and the California State Fish and Game differ in their estimates of black bears in the state. Fish and Game estimates in 2007 that there were 25,000 to 30,000 bears alive and well in the state. They estimated in 1982 that there were 10,000 to 15,000 bears in the state. So the bear population in California has doubled in 25 years. Fish and Game also estimates that bear densities range from 1 to 2.5 per square mile throughout the state where the area has forests and is habitable by bears. Fish and Game also says that more than half of California's 25,000 to 30,000 bears live in the North Coast Cascade region, and thus the high kill ratios in those counties. The last year the California Fish and Game had data was in 2006, indicating that they issued 21,786 bear tags, authority to shoot and kill a bear, and 1,735 bears were taken, a success rate of 7.9%. Reports indicated that it took the successful hunter 4 days to bag their bear. So here we have numbers of bears killed in the counties. That seems to vaguely correlate with Bigfoot sightings. You can take a moment to check out this, spreadsheet. Light up and smoke this piece of fucking work right here. So it's not perfectly descending, like... I don't know. But you see vaguely what he's going for, I guess. That the more bears killed, the more Bigfoot sightings. I don't know if that works when you're comparing numbers like 1077 to the number 8. 8. I don't know. Evaluating the data. Well, once again, I want to go back to this shit. So here you have in Trinity County, 2015 bears were killed. You have 10 Bigfoot sightings. Like 10 being a lot. Like, and the number of Bigfoot sightings on this chart, you see, like, the highest is 28. And that goes with Humboldt County, which had 1,310 bears killed, which is significantly less than Trinity. But, yeah, so highest number is 28, lowest number is 24. That's, like, not a very big range at all. So, like, that could just be flukes. Whereas, like, when you have numbers like 2,000, 1,000, 800, 700, it's like, that's like a decent sample size of something. You can, like, figure shit out based on that. But when you have a number like 4, I'm not sure you can do that. Sugar Walls in the chat just got my new Charlie shirt. Great print. Buy a tee. Go to yakovalive.com, hit that merch tab if you want a t-shirt, most definitely. Thank you very much, Sugar Walls. K98 says, "Hello, police. I am of the Bear Nation. Please help me remove this wild bear before he gets my goat." That's basically what the guy said. It's gonna get you goat. Evaluating the data. It's a fact that Hoopa has significantly more bears per acre than anywhere in California and significantly fewer deer than other Forest Service property in other parts of the state. It's also a fact that bears in Hoopa are not hunted. They have large quantities of food, and California Fish and Game has no authority on the reservation, thus no depredation permits. A county-by-county search through California Fish and Game archives indicates that Humboldt County sits in the number 5 position for most bears killed in a California county from 1996 to 2006. In that same 10-year period, Humboldt County has more than double the amount of Bigfoot sightings reports than any other county in the top 8 in bears killed. The question that science needs to ask is there a correlation between the number of bears in a specific area and the number of Bigfoot? Knowing that Hoopa and its surrounding region has had a large number of Bigfoot sightings, it makes the bear-Bigfoot connection compelling. Does Bigfoot know that it will not be harmed if it stays confined to the area around Hoopa? Does it realize that the Hoopa people will not shoot at it? There is another area that sits next to the Hoopa Reservation that has an equally compelling case for Bigfoot: Redwood National Park. The park sits just west of Hoopa and shares Bald Hills Road as a commonality. Redwood National Park does not allow hunting, has few guests in comparison to Yosemite and Yellowstone, and yet has a huge name in the Bigfoot community as harboring a high concentration of Bigfoot. The park does sit in Humboldt County and is an area that has never had significant foot or vehicular traffic. It should be noted that Bald Hills Road has its start at the entrance of the park and is famous for Bigfoot sightings. See Sightings and Incidents chapters for more details. We'll get there one day. Chapter 3, Bigfoot Sightings Overview. Now we're getting into the nitty-gritty, and that's where I will pick up next time. So yeah, once again, everyone go to yakovalive.com, hit that merch tab, listen to the podcast, do whatever you got to do. Do the things. Patreon.com/yakovalive if you want to come hang out in the Discord. Sunday night, Tape Eaters live, baby. We'll be talking about stuff similar to this. Glimmerman, portals. We'll definitely talk about Bigfoot, more missing 411 stuff. It's all going to be in there, so definitely check it out. Thank you very much for joining me. Trey Fesk says, Uncle Yak's Shack of Curiosities. That's right. Dude, that's a good title for something. That's dope. I'll catch you all on the flip side. Thank you. Thank you for showing up.